So today's session is a workshop on London Arts and Humanities, partnership PhD students. So as you know that, let me give you a brief overview of the outline of how the session work. I'll tell you something. I'll tell you about Project EduAccess, then we'll meet our amazing panelist. Then I'll hand over to Gillen, and after presentation, we'll move to the Q&A. So those of you who are already well versed about Project EduAccess and the kind of work we do, and those of you who are new to us, I would like to say that something about Project EduAccess. We know that access to higher education, leadership, and professional opportunity is a privilege. And most of the people from marginalized communities are systematically denied, either through cost, information, and dispositional barriers. So here at Project EduAccess, it is a modest attempt to improve inclusivity in these spaces by removing some of these barriers from marginalized communities, particularly in the global South. We aim to provide the participation, representation of the individuals from marginalized communities in higher education and create avenues for their personal, professional, and leadership development. And for this, we do this by way of four methods. That is, four key interventions. Number one is through mentoring, counseling, and role modeling. Secondly, through information, advice, and guidance. Thirdly, through capacity building, leadership skill development. And fourthly, by evidence-based advocacy. So for today's session, we have amazing panelists. I'll introduce them. We have Johnny Melt. She is LAPH Director. Thank you so much for joining. We have Gillian Harrison. She is LAHP's Senior Officer, a Senior Support Officer. Then we have Andrina Karaman. She is LAHP's Manager. Also with us, we have a guest, Gauhar, and he is also scholar recipient of the same scholarship. So any of you having specific questions relating to South Asia, they're most welcome to ask her. So now I'll stop sharing my screen and hand over to Gillian.
Thank you, Yamina. I will just share my screen now, and then Joe will be doing the presentation for everyone. Can everyone see that okay?
Yeah.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks, Gillian. Thank you. And thank you, Yamina, for inviting us. Very delighted to be here and speak to you all today. Just to introduce myself again, I'm Johanna Molt. I am the director of LAHP. I'm also Professor of French and Visual Culture at King's College London. So I spend about half of my time directing the London Arts and Humanities Partnership, and the rest of the time I am an academic in King's College London. Next slide, Gillian. So I'll start by saying a little bit about who we are and what we do at LAHP, London Arts and Humanities Partnership. So we're a doctoral training partnership co-funded by the Arts and Humanities Research Council, or AHRC, and by our 8 university partners. HEI here means higher education institutions, so universities and other schools. Some of our partners are not officially universities for reasons which I can come to, but HEI just here means effectively universities. So we're funded from UK government money via the Arts and Humanities Research Council, which is part of United Kingdom Research and Innovation. And we fund up to 90 PhD studentships a year in subjects across the arts and humanities. And of these, 10%, around 10%, it's a little bit more this year, are collaborative doctoral awards. So those are PhD projects involving a cultural partner or another external partner. We'll say a little bit more about that in just a minute. And up to 30% of our studentships can be awarded to international students. So that's important to know. We can't give all our studentships to international studentships, but just under a third. And that's part of UKRI, UK Research and Innovations rules about how we use our funding. Next slide. This is our team, so you'll see me here and Andrea, who's on the right-hand side, and Gillian, our Senior Support Officer. We also have 2 Deputy Directors, Tony and Mark, who aren't with us today, but this is our small team plus our colleague Stuart. Next. So yes, there we all are. Our 2 deputies, sorry, Gillian, our 2 deputies cover, on the one hand, training and cohort development. I'll say a bit about that in just a minute. And the other deputy, Mark, covers collaborations and partnerships. Next slide, thanks, Gillian. And we are a partnership then of 8 HEIs, higher education institutions or universities, as follows. So King's College London, London School of Economics and Political Science, Queen Mary University of London, the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama, the Royal College of Art, the Royal College of Music, the School of Advanced Study at the University of London, and University College London. So those are the universities that make up the London Arts and Humanities Partnership. Next slide. We also have a number of external partners, so partners that aren't universities, the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, the Wellcome Collection and Trust, which is a very big collection focused on the relationship between science and arts, Google Arts and Culture, the Museum of London, the Live Art Development Agency, and the National Archives of the United Kingdom. Those are our core partners who help us with all sorts of things, but particularly with training and placements for our students. Next slide. We welcome applications. This is the important bit. We welcome applications across all of our subject areas and approaches in the arts and humanities, including interdisciplinary research and practice-based research. And I'll say a bit more about what that means, how we define the arts and humanities in just a minute. We welcome applications from people who've recently completed their master's programs, or even you might be completing a master's program now, and also anyone with relevant professional and or practitioner experience. And we welcome applications for full-time or part-time study and from applicants of all ages and backgrounds. Next. For international applicants, as I mentioned, we're able to award 30% of our studentships, and that includes the stipend. So what we cover is the fees, university tuition fees, plus also we give a stipend of living expenses to all our students. And so 30% of the studentships can go to international students. All our institutions will fund, we fund up to the home fee rate, but the partners, the 8 university partners will cover the remainder of the fee. Fee status, whether you're a home fee student or an international student, I'm guessing that lots of you might be international students, that will be determined by the university you're applying to and not by LAHP. And it's just worth noting that we're not allowed to cover visa fees as part of this. So next slide. So what do we fund then in our studentships? We give initial funding of 3 years or 3.5 years for our collaborative doctoral awards, and that's for full-time study or the equivalent for part-time study. So normally that would be 6 years for part-time or 7 years for CDA, with the possibility of an extension based on research needs. And projects should be designed and supervised in a way that enables students to submit within the funded period. So we expect students to complete within that funded 3-year or 3.5-year period or part-time equivalent. And students who've already started their PhDs can apply if they've already started at one of our 8 partner institutions. But I'm guessing for most of you, you might be thinking of applying before you've started. So next slide, Gillian. We have a strong commitment to promoting and supporting equality, diversity and inclusion. This is partly why we were so interested to collaborate on this event with Project EduAccess, because I think we have very similar aims and goals in terms of widening access to doctoral study, doctoral research. And we are committed to providing equality of opportunity for all our applicants, students and staff. We're committed to a community in which all people can learn, work and interact freely without fear of discrimination, prejudice, or harassment. And all applicants, students, staff, supervisors, and stakeholders will be treated equitably and not accorded less favourable treatment on the grounds of any of these factors listed here. So that's a very important part of our commitment. So as well as funding studentship, so we provide, as I mentioned, fees and the stipend, the living expenses to our students. We also offer an extensive range of training. And this includes language courses, training on research skills and methodologies, training on diversity, inclusivity and equality and resilience. So how to manage your own work as a developing researcher. Public engagement and impact, and that's very much about how to talk about your research to different kinds of audiences, reaching out beyond universities, beyond students, beyond academics, towards different kinds of audiences, different publics who might be interested in your research, and also digital arts and humanities. So we're very interested also in training our students to conduct their research within a digital environment where relevant. Thanks, Gillian. We also offer placements to all our students. So all our students have the opportunity to take a placement with a cultural or other partner, and that's a great opportunity to gain experience whilst doing research into wider kind of arts and cultural organisations. So our students go on placements in all kinds of organisations, whether it be big national museums, small local museums, archives and collections. Some of our students go on placements within UK government, so UK government departments, to learn more about policy, for instance. And we, Gillian here, who's on the call, is our support officer focused particularly on placements. So if anyone has any questions about placements, Gillian is very well placed to answer them and can give you a clearer idea of all the range of placements that we offer. We also have some additional funds, so all our students can apply for extensions to their research funding, and also additional funds for research and training. So things like travelling to conferences, travelling to conduct field work or archival research, and also for activities to do with public engagement and entrepreneurship and student-led activities, so organising conferences and events for fellow students. So we offer funding for all of those things for which students can apply alongside their main studentship. Next slide. Cohort development. So what we aim to do across our 8 universities is really build a network and a community so that all our students feel that they're part of that wider community across these London institutions, researching and communicating with each other. We have a number of events throughout the year where we invite LAHP students and supervisors, and we provide opportunities to meet fellow students and learn about each other's research. And we also have student-led networks such as the Black and Global Majority Network, Women Researchers Network, Practice-Based Research Network, and various others. And some are more active than others at different times, but we encourage our students to form networks and communities amongst themselves. Next one. So our studentship competition, for anyone who might be interested in applying, is currently open. And this is our timeline. So the application is now open. I'll say a little bit more about the application process in just a minute, but you can view all of the information on our website here. And our deadline for applications is the 31st of January. So it's coming up fairly soon, but still plenty of time. Students must, by this point, have already applied for a PhD place at one of our LAHP partner HEI. So one of those 8 universities. You don't have to have been accepted, but you must already have applied for a place. And you must have a named supervisor, even if that's only provisional, who'll be able to give a supporting statement on your application. We expect all our applicants to have received an offer of a place from their university of choice by the end of February. And by the end of April, we will start sending out offers of studentships to our successful candidates with 2 weeks to accept or to decline. And our studentships will begin on the 1st of October 2025. So that's the start date. What we're looking for, so how do we decide who gets funding? We have a very transparent scoring system. You can see more about this on our website if you're interested, but it's based on the following. So quality of the research proposal. So what's the project that you'd like to research, how original, interesting and important our reviewers think it is, and that's worth 50%. The preparedness of the student, excuse me, so that's everything you've achieved to date, all the skills and achievements that you have and that you will bring to the project, the expertise that you already have to undertake the research, and the feasibility of the proposed research. So how feasible is it to do this research within 3 years or equivalent of part-time? Next slide, Julie. So to say more about those elements, the quality of the research proposal. So this is important. This is worth 50% of the score for an application. So we're looking for the significance, originality and clarity of the research proposal, the underpinning ideas, aims and research questions, the research design, so how are you actually going to conduct this research, the methodology and the sources, and the suitability of the proposal for doctoral research. So is this a good topic for a PhD? And dissemination and potential impact. So how will you communicate the findings of your research to an audience? How will you get the research out there? And who will it have an impact on? And that can be demonstrated in the application form. In the research proposal, there's a space called a non-technical summary, which is a short summary. And you're able to give some key references, and your supervisor, proposed supervisor, can also give a supporting statement and can mention all of these elements there. So then we have preparedness of the student. As I mentioned, that's worth 25%. So that's where you would want to say something about your previous academic achievements in relevant subject areas, and or your relevant professional or practitioner experience. And that's particularly for applicants who might have non-standard academic trajectories. So what else have you done in terms of your professional experience that might prepare you for undertaking the research, and relevant knowledge, skills and or training that you've already done that might make you suitable to undertake this research. And that can be demonstrated by academic qualifications, but also professional or practitioner experience, which you would show in your personal statement and which your supervisor could also comment on in the application. Next one. And then feasibility, that's that third criterion, the feasibility of the proposed research, also worth 25%. So is it likely that you could complete this research within the time frame? So 3 years normally for full-time or 6 years part-time. Have you identified the training needs? So what training would you need to complete this project? Justification of fieldwork and study visits. So if you need to visit an archive or complete fieldwork, have you clearly thought about that and planned how you would undertake that? And how does your research interest fit with your proposed supervisor's research and the wider intellectual culture, research culture of the department where you propose to study, the university, and also of LAHP? So those are the things that we would expect you to mention to cover that feasibility section. And you can demonstrate that in the timetable that you're invited to provide for how you would complete the research. You can say something about any additional training you would need. You can demonstrate this in the research proposal, the personal statement, and the supervisor statement. Next slide, Julia. So if you're interested in applying, these are the steps you need to do before you apply. First of all, make sure that you're eligible for AHRC funding. And I mentioned earlier that the definition of arts, what qualifies as arts and humanities research, That's defined by the AHRC, the Arts and Humanities Research Council. So if you go on a website, you'll see a link that will take you through to the AHRC and how it defines what classes as arts and humanities research, so arts and humanities subject areas. So obviously there can be areas where, for instance, you might be on the edge of arts and humanities or social sciences, and you might think about which your project really fits. Does it fit more under social sciences or more under arts and humanities? And if you have a look at that information, that might help you to clarify. But we do also fund interdisciplinary research. So we don't expect anyone's research necessarily to only fit very neatly within one subject area. We are also open to interdisciplinary projects. So in terms of eligibility, that's the first thing, your subject area. Does it count as arts and humanities? For continuing students, that's whether you have at the length of time you've already completed of your studies. Also, you need to make sure that you've applied for a PhD place at one of the 8 LAHP universities, university partners. So again, King's, UCL, LSE, Queen Mary, School of Advanced Study, Royal College of Art, Royal College of Music, Royal Central School of Speech and Drama. You can see them all along the bottom of each slide there. So you need to have applied. You don't need to have necessarily yet been accepted. You need to have discussed your proposal and your application with your proposed supervisor. So now is a good time to be contacting them if you haven't already. And make sure that you've identified 2 supervisors, a first and second supervisor or joint supervisors. And again, that would be something to discuss with the proposed first supervisor. Next slide. And then just a quick word about our online application and how it works. These are the main sections of the application form. So first of all, you've got space for a personal statement. And this is where you would cover what knowledge, skills and training you already have and that you would bring to the research. How and why is your research suitable for a LAHP scholarship, studentship? How would you seek to benefit from and contribute to our LAHP community? And how might you want to engage with different audiences and organisations during your research programme of research? Then there's the supervisor statement, which is obviously completed by one of the supervisors on behalf of both of them, which would cover their relevant research experience and their supervisory experience. So how are they qualified to supervise your project? They will then comment up to 300 words on the quality of the proposed research, on the preparedness of the applicant, so they can say something about why you're the right person to be doing this research, how your previous experiences prepared you, and then that bit about feasibility. So they'll say something about how feasible it is to complete this research within the funded period. And then finally, there's the third section, main section on the form, which is the research proposal. So this is where you get to really describe what you would want to do with your research project. So that's 1,200 words. And here's where you need to describe the significance and originality, underpinning ideas, aims, and research, research design, methodology, and sources. And then you can also cite up to 10 key references. So if you want to refer to specific scholarship that already exists in your field, you've got space to put those references in. So that's really the main area on the form where you would need to describe your project. And all of this is done online via a system called FlexiGrant. You'll find the list. By the way, we will make these slides available to you afterwards. We can circulate those. We'll coordinate with Yamina as how best to circulate these. You can also see you will also be able to see the video of our information sessions, and all of this stuff is on our website, including the links to how to apply. And just before we finish, very briefly then, what happens after you apply? So after the end of January, which is our deadline, then it comes over to us and our subject assessment panels to decide which of the applicants will be successful. And these are the subject area groups that we cover. And for each of these 25 subject areas, we will convene a panel of experts drawn from across our 8 universities. So there'll be a panel on each of these subjects, as you can see there, grouped into 4 disciplinary clusters. So you will be asked to specify which of these subject areas your project falls under, and it will then be assessed by specialists. And then once we've done that, we bring those 4 disciplinary cluster areas together. All the applications will have been scored and ranked. And then finally, we come to our Studentship Award panel where we decide which applicants we're going to make offers to. And we do usually have a reserve list. So, and we usually end up making quite a few offers from our reserve list. So we have a first wave of offers at the end of April, and then some students will be put on the waiting list, reserve list at that point, and we'll be able to make further offers if students aren't able to take up their award. And again, you can see this on our website. Sorry, Gillian, just go back a minute. Thank you. You can see this on our website. So if you're wondering, again, if you're wondering about your subject area, it's worth having a little look at this list, because this will give you a clearer idea of all of the subject areas that we cover. Next slide, thanks, Gillian. And a few final words of advice. I know that Gauhar might also, because he's successfully been through this process, so he might have some words of advice as well from the student angle. But my final words of advice, the competition is very strong. So last year, for instance, we had 8 applications for 81 places in our open competition. So it's quite tough. It's worth thinking about the project as soon as possible. I'm sure if you're interested in applying, you've probably also already given that some thought. Make sure that you look at our website. You can find out more about current collaborative doctoral award projects that are available. You can find out about current PhD students in LAHP and what they're doing. That will give you an idea of the kinds of things that we fund. Find a potential supervisor as soon as you have a project in mind. Take your time in writing the proposal and personal statement to make sure that you get it right and get as strong as possible a description of what you're trying to do, and make sure to read the online guidance. There's lots of info on our website to read while you're completing the application. And that, I think, is it from me. There's our link on how to apply, but as I say, we will make all of this available to you, so don't worry if there's anything you missed or you didn't note down. We'll coordinate with Yamina to make sure that you have access to all of this and all of these links and slides, etc. So I think unless Gauhar, you want to say anything at that point?
I think we should take questions, and maybe I'll address some of their concerns in the questions. And
Great.
if something is left, then I can always pitch up. I think we have a question from Taskin. She says, does it cover gender studies at LSE? I think it should.
Just a moment, I'm just looking at the chat so I can see.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Taskin, you can also unmute yourself.
I can answer Taskin's question. It depends. We don't, if it's a 3-year PhD program, yes, it should do. It will depend a little bit on the type of project that you're doing, because obviously gender studies can cut across social sciences as well as arts and humanities. So it will depend a little bit about your method, what kind of approach you're taking, what the focus of your project is. And what I would suggest would be to take advice from your proposed supervisor at LSE, because they'll be able to tell you, because they also have funding for social science that you would be able to apply for if your project falls more under a social science subject area. So I would say take advice, but in principle, yes, it will if it's an arts and humanities based project. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your amazing presentation. Like, feel free, all the participants, feel free to raise your hands and unmute yourselves, and even put the questions in the chat. I think we have one more question. I'll read that aloud. Does LAHP applications require reference separate from university applications? And if yes, do they have to be requested directly from the referees, or can we upload them ourselves?
That's a good question. That's Shamian Jamal, I think. It's a good question. The short answer is no. For a LAP application, you don't need to provide references. It will just be your supervisor's statement from your proposed supervisor. Having said that, in order to apply to the university for the PhD place, you would need references at that point. So obviously you'd need to follow the instructions of your chosen university, but that will usually involve providing references. And usually, I think I'm right in saying for all of our 8 universities, the referee would be able to upload them themselves. So you can get an automatic email sent to your referee, and your referee can then log onto the portal and upload. But we don't need it for the LAP application, just for the university application. There's an interesting one from Abid here, Masters in Social Work, intending to pursue a PhD. Shall I answer that one? In Disability Representation in Media. Shall I answer that one, Yamina?
Yeah, you can. Anyone, feel free to answer.
Yes, possibly. Again, a little bit like the previous question, it will depend a little bit on your approach. So whether you're taking, say, a more quantitative social science type approach, or maybe a more qualitative arts and humanities type approach. So again, I would suggest discussing with potential supervisors. I don't know which university you'd be looking at, but I would take advice from your prospective supervisor as to whether they think you would fit better in an arts and humanities application or social science application. And you're also Queen Mary at LSE, yeah. I would suggest that you just speak to them and ask them and take advice from them. And you're saying should you apply for only one or more? Good question again. For us, for LAP, you can only apply to us through one university, so you'd need to choose at that point. So you can only apply with support for one from one of our universities.
I just want to pitch in. What you can also do is, I mean, let's say LAHP doesn't work out. I would say apply to more universities.
Yes.
If LAHP doesn't work out, sometimes Queen Mary or LSE would have internal funding and they can help you. So my suggestion would be apply to more universities. Decide at the time of the award. If you get an LAHP award, then take a decision. Don't filter yourself right in the beginning.
Yes, good advice there from Gauhar. Yeah, I agree. If it's so, apply to more than one university, but just bear in mind that for LAP, you have to designate just one. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Gauhar and Chana. There's Zoon, you can unmute yourself.
Hi, good evening from India, and thank you for the. And it was brilliant. Thank you for taking out time. But I have a couple of questions. One is that same. I have done masters in social work, and also that I have an experience of more than 6 years as in professional working experience. And will that experience count in this PhD? Moreover, I have worked with the national funded project like USAID and currently working under Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition funded project. So will that be a kind of a bonus point in my application when I pursue for PhD? And will my education background again will fit with the in this complete opportunity?
Thank you, Zoom. Thank you for those questions. So first, on the first question of eligibility, I would say the same answer, really. If your qualification is in social work, it will depend a little bit on the nature of your proposed project as to whether it would be better funded by the Economic and Social Science Research Council or by us, the AHRC. So again, I would suggest that you consult your proposed department and supervisor, and they'll be able to advise you on that. On the other questions, in terms of your professional experience, I would say yes, very definitely. Both your professional working experience and those other connections that you have, that other professional experience that you have will be very valuable, especially if they're directly relevant to your project, whether you want to work on something that's related to the professional work that you're doing, or you're drawing on skills that you've gained in your professional work. Yes, definitely relevant. So don't neglect to describe those in your application, because alongside your academic background, those will be really central, I think, to your application, because it's about showing how your experience, both your academic experience and your professional experience, showing how that qualifies you and prepares you to do the research. So yeah, that makes sense.
Thank you. Thank you. Many thanks.
Thank you so much for that answer. I believe Gelen is also answering the question. Antira is also answering the question in the chat. If you feel free, Abid, you can unmute yourself as well to get some clarity. Or
shall I
Thank you.
answer? Sorry, go on.
Okay, no. Okay, thank you so much, Yamina. Yeah, I just wanted to ask, like, say I submitted the name of LSE in my application, but I did not get an offer from LSE. I got an offer from Queen Mary. Is that an issue for me, or would that be like tantamount to maybe my application will be rejected because I did not get an offer from the university I mentioned it in my application? One. Second is, again, similar to what Zoon asked, like I have 6+ years of experience in media, but now since I'm switching to social work and development sector, I would like to say, like, should my application be more of an academic, or can I mention my experience, the relevant experience in my application? Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Abid. So first of all, on your question about institutions, you would need, if you saw on the timeline, so by the end of February, any applications that have not been successful in gaining a place at the university will not be eligible. So for instance, if you were to apply for Queen Mary and LSE, you applied to LAHP through Queen Mary, but you didn't get a place at Queen Mary, then your application won't go forward with LAHP. So it's about choosing one. That doesn't mean then that you can't, if you find another source of funding, obviously you can go forward with the other institution, but if you don't get a place at the institution that you've applied to LAHP through, then we can't take your application forward. And that's partly because it's the prospective supervisor who has to support your application. Because effectively, it's worth saying that all of our studentships are funded 50-50. So 50% comes from the UK government via the Arts and Humanities Research Council, and 50% comes from the university itself. So obviously, the universities will only pay for the students that they accept, if you see what I mean. On the second question, Abid, on your experience, I would generally say to talk about your professional experience, even if you're going in a slightly different direction for your research, because I think, you know, if you've spent 6 years working, I think you mentioned you've spent 6 years working in media, you know, there's always skills that you're going to bring to research from that. So I would always encourage applicants to say something about their professional experience, because we do take that very seriously. So for instance, it might be very specialized skills and experience that's very directly related to your research, but it might just be other stuff. It might be to do with project management, with communication to different kinds of audiences, with research, smaller research projects in different professional contexts. There's always something that you will have gained that's really relevant and has prepared you to complete the research project. So I would say always, even if you feel like you're slightly going in a different direction, I would always say something about your professional experience, because you're always going to be bringing something from that professional experience to your research career, I think.
thank you so much, John. It was really wholesome. If there are any other questions, just feel free to ask. And also we have Gauhar with us. If you have any specific questions regarding to South Asia and how to apply, feel free to ask.
I would also say, I mean, before we end this session, I would say read your proposal a couple of times. Don't just write and then submit. If possible, maybe get someone to proofread. It's always good to have second pair of eyes. That doesn't mean that the other person will write your proposal, but it's always good to have one more pair of eyes to have a look at your proposal. Reach out to your supervisors as potential supervisors as soon as possible. Uh, Things work differently in this part of the world. Generally, this is winter break and year end. A lot of potential supervisors might be going on holidays. They might be off, so do it as soon as possible. You won't have a lot of time. Lastly, I would say read instructions, because sometimes what we do is we think we got them. I think read them twice, thrice, so that you understand what is being asked, and try to directly respond to what has been asked in the application, in the form. A lot of details that are being asked are clearly mentioned. We just sometimes don't uh, pay enough attention. Pay attention to what is being asked. It's sometimes just as basic as that. Other than that, if you have more questions on training, on what else does LAHP provide, I'm happy to answer those.
That's great. That's really good advice from Gauhar. Yes, to focusing on what's being asked in each section of the form.
Yeah, so I think it's a very good advice. At times you neglect what's in, like what's a simple question that has been asked. I just wanted to ask one question, is that is it important to have a relevant work experience or an work experience at all in the first place to get accepted for this fellowship?
It really depends. I would say, I mean, it's absolutely not necessary. So some of our students have gone straight through university, undergraduate, master's degree, and have not worked, or maybe they worked as a barista or, you know, in a cafe or something. So not kind of professional work. So we don't necessarily require it. But if you have it and it's relevant to the project, then it can be very useful. So our students, I think Gauhar will probably agree on this. Our students are quite a wide mixture. Lots of students have had professional careers and done other things, but equally lots of students have come straight through university and mainly been studying and haven't worked, you know, haven't got a lot of professional experience. So it's not a disadvantage necessarily.
Thank you so much. If there are any other questions, like feel free to answer. We still have some time.
I think one more information, maybe Joe would be the right person to provide. This is the last time that LAHP would be funding a cohort. A lot of AHRC, which is Arts and Humanities Research Council, funding will change in certain ways. So bear in mind that if you are thinking of doing a PhD in London, this might be a good opportunity. Next year, who knows what kind of funding we might have. And so I would say, if you're thinking of applying, apply this year. Um, and if Joe wants to say something else, please do.
Yes, thank you, Gauhar. I'll just say a quick word about that. Yes, that's right. We are unfortunately losing our funding for future cohorts. The AHRC has decided to reorganize how it divides up its funding. So we won't have this funding from next year. So if you are thinking, do apply now. There will be some funding beyond next year, but it will probably be mostly administered by individual universities, and there will be less of it probably because unfortunately the budget for the AHRC has been reduced. So yeah, we don't know exactly how it will work beyond 2025. There will still be some funding, but it won't be as generous. So this is a good opportunity to apply for the LAHP funding, because also, as I mentioned a bit in my presentation, it's not just obviously the funding itself that covers your fees and your living expenses is really central. That's what you need. Most students can't do their PhD without that, obviously, because it's a very expensive business. But we do also offer a lot of other things on top of that. So all of those placement opportunities, which can be really good for professional development, all of the other opportunities to apply for funding, to organise conferences or seminars, to travel and do research in archives or fieldwork, all of that kind of stuff. So also, you know, that's quite a big part of what we offer as well. And another reason I would say for trying to apply now while we still have that. And any students who are successful in this round, just to reassure you, if you are successful in this round and you start a PhD in October 2025, then you will be guaranteed your funding for the full period that the funding applies. So if you're applying for full-time, you'll be guaranteed that 3 years of full-time funding. Even though we won't be recruiting new students, we will still have the funding for those completing. So anyone who's currently studying or starting in October 25, they will be guaranteed their funding as normal, and plus all of the training that we offer, etc.
Thank you so much. I think it's so wholesome. I think Zoon had raised her hand. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, sorry, just to introduce, my name is Mihika, and somehow I'm been using some other device, so please excuse that. Well, I have a question, just for removing all kind of ambiguity. So from this scholarship, we'll be applying through only one in university, and whatever the course of or department we'll be applying. So we have just one university from one this scholarship, right? If I'm wrong somewhere, please correct me.
No, that's right for this opportunity. As Gauhar mentioned, some of the universities might have other sources of funding which you might be eligible for. So they might have internal sources that they distribute themselves. And also to say that London Arts and Humanities Partnership is one of 10 doctoral training partnerships in the UK. So they're more or less regionally based. So we're just one of 10. So you can also apply through another doctoral training partnership. So somebody mentioned, I think, Edinburgh in the chat. If you wanted to apply also to Edinburgh, you can also apply to, it's called the Scottish Graduate School for the Arts and Humanities, and it has the same funding model as we do at LAHP. So you can also apply to another one of those. So you can only apply to one LAHP institution out of the 8, but you can apply to other doctoral training partnerships. And you should be able to find out from the universities which doctoral training partnership they're a member of. Yeah, so for Edinburgh, as I say, it would be the Scottish Graduate School for Arts and Humanities. There are a couple of others that cover some London institutions. So many universities in the UK are covered by a doctoral training partnership.
Just
Thank
one
you
more.
so
Sorry, go ahead,
yeah,
please.
thank you. I'm sorry, I'm putting so many questions across. Also, is there any age limit for this partnership? No. Okay.
No age limit. This is part of our commitment to equality, diversity, and inclusion. We have no age limits. So we have had students, I think the oldest is in their 60s, maybe, but I could be wrong, but certainly very commonly people in their 30s, 40s, 50s. So no age limit. Yeah, sorry, I think Gauhar wanted to come in.
Yeah, others, for example, if you want to apply, let's say, look for the universities. I'm saying, but have a look. What I'm trying to say is, if you're applying to 2 universities in London, there are more opportunities. For example, there is one more doctoral partnership program which is called LIST DTP. I'll put it in the chat. Look at LIST DTP website also. It might help you. I mean, have a look at it. You can apply to LIST DTP as well as LAHP, for example. You can apply to multiple funding programs. For example, in my case, I got a scholarship from Westminster through Techni, and I got LAHP. Then I decided what I wanted to do. So sometimes that can also happen. You can get 2 fundings within London, for example. And then even across UK, you can apply, let's say, to a Midlands doctoral training program, which is most probably Oxford, Warwick, and others. And you can apply to LAHP as well, as Joe rightly said, or list TTP.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think it's so wholesome and insightful. Apart from the session has been really very helpful. If any of the participants have any final questions or comments, and plus I would say that we have a lot of resources and materials available on the Project EduAccess website. So you can, I just pasted the link in the chat, and the access of the YouTube session, the entire session is being recorded. So you'll find the access of all the information and material on our website and on our YouTube link as well. So feel free to go there and access all other resources as well.
Great. And also just to say, if you have questions, don't hesitate to, I'll ask one of my colleagues. Gillian, would you mind just popping the email in the chat again, if you wouldn't mind? Feel free to email if you have questions about LAHP. You can also use that email address to get in touch with Gauhar and the other student ambassadors. If you like, we can pass messages on. Well, I'm sure Gauhar would also be happy to share his details as well. So if you want a student perspective, that's fine. And, you know, don't apologize about asking questions. It's, you know, that's what we're here for. We're really delighted to answer any questions that you may have that might help you thinking about your application.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We'll also provide the emails, or you can directly email them, or email Project EduAccess as well if you feel hesitant. Just feel free to ask as many questions as you want. Thank you so much, Anna, and all of you for this amazing session. So I think we don't have any more questions. If we have, so we can end the session, or do you want to share any of the insights or any of the tips at last? Then we can end the session. And like, feel free to ask LAHP individually, ask Gauhar, access the Project EduAccess directly through their email, social website, social media sites, and I'll like, I pasted the link for the I'll again repaste that for the materials and the resources that are available on YouTube. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Kevin, Jonathan.
Thank you very much, everyone who's been here. Thank you for inviting us, Yamina. Thanks, Gauhar, for setting this up for us. Thanks, everybody.
Welcome. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Bye.